Thank you. To a special trade deadline edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. Bill, we did it.
We made it, buddy.
The deadline is over. There's still trades trickling in. As they come in, we'll try, if anything big happens, we'll try to throw it out there. But yes, quite a lot has happened between the deadline and today. There was some more trades. Let's start with, should we start with Kevin Durant, who remains in place? Kevin Durant, there were reports that the Warriors might be interested, and then all of a sudden they were out on him, and Kevin Durant remains in Phoenix. There were other teams also reportedly that were interested and were calling the Suns and blitzing them about whether or not Kevin Durant could be pried loose from the Suns. Instead, he ends up staying in Phoenix. We can talk about whether or not that's a good idea. We can talk about how long he'll be there. There's a lot to unpack here.
All of it.
You and I just did Spotlight, CBS Sports HQ Spotlight, and my main thing, this is your department. I don't want to step on you.
You love this joke.
Our senior vibes correspondent, but the vibes in Phoenix don't seem great, Bill.
So that made me laugh when we were on it. All right, here's the thing. All right, so you're the Phoenix Suns. Matt Ishbia takes over and immediately demonstrates he has no knowledge of how to build a winning basketball team and handcuffs your organization in the second apron, brings in Bradley Beal, the no trade clause from hell that is the reason that could happen. And you say to yourself, how can we basically outside of a salary dump keep the same team that's not very good, but make it even worse? Here's what we'll do. We'll tell everybody in America Bradley Beal sucks and we don't want him, so that'll piss him off. And then we'll try, but we'll fail to ship Kevin Durant back to the Warriors so that when everything falls apart, we can get everybody back together. And I think it's Ramona Shelburne who reported this, but there's a report out there that basically everything's now toxic. So before you were just bad, now you're bad and toxic. It is an absolute disaster. It was already a disaster. I didn't think they could make this trio worse. They found a way to do it. And, yeah, I'll be curious what you think on the Durant thing. He has left before. It sounds like one of the reasons he didn't want to go back to Golden State was the optics of it. But if he gets past the optics of going somewhere else, another team, it certainly makes sense that in the summer at some point he could be elsewhere.
Yeah, there was reportedly a phone call between Steph and KD where Steph was basically clued into like, hey, it really doesn't sound like KD wants to do this. They won 2 championships with Kevin Durant on that team, but when he left, the vibes between him and Draymond, unsurprisingly, were not good. And those guys kind of have a love-hate relationship. And if you're KD, I get probably not wanting to go back there. The problem is now you're stuck in Phoenix at least until the offseason. And the Phoenix situation isn't good. As you said, they weren't playing well. And then on top of that, the vibes haven't been good and look like they're continuing to deteriorate. It wasn't good with Yusuf Nurkic and Bud, who apparently hadn't talked to each other in months. Now, the Suns did end up trading Yusuf Nurkic today. That's not surprising. They shipped him off along with a 2026 first-round pick in exchange for Cody Martin and Vasily Micic and a 2026 second. Now, basically, this is a cash dump. Like, who knows? Like, Cody Martin on a team that's trying to win might be a useful piece. Micic maybe. But this is essentially a cash dump because Yusuf Nurkic's salary is $19.4 million next year, guaranteed. Cody and Micic are non-guaranteed. So if they end up moving away from those two guys in the offseason, the Suns, who we know have been totally hamstrung by that second apron, they can duck under the second apron, and now all of a sudden they can aggregate salaries. So, look, that's a small silver lining, but the Suns,
very small,
as currently constituted, both by the odds makers and the predictive models, are lumped in with the Kings and the Spurs as the last 3 teams fighting for the final playoff spot in the Western Conference. If I'm the Suns and if I'm Kevin Durant, I don't feel great about that.
No, and by the way, I think on the show yesterday, you asked me who I would leave out of 2 teams of the play-in, and I said Suns. And that was before the report, and I guess it should have been self-evident it was going to happen, that these guys are not happy to be there. Let me ask you a question. So a lot of the reporting, I'm sure it's correct, and what I've heard too, we all know, is that about why Durant would not go back to the Warriors. Warriors with Steph, obviously a better place to be if you want to win than this current Suns team, was Draymond. Now, I had a guy yesterday, I told you, another guy today texted me that they think some of it's KD didn't want to be coached by Kerr again. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's all Draymond. if you're the Warriors, do you ship out Dre if that would have gotten KD coming back? Because I would have.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm here for
he's
it.
the better player. He's the better
He's
player.
the better.
So you'd have to consider it.
It's amazing that he turns down. It just says a lot about what Kevin Durant prioritizes, and my ability to say that word is faded through all of this the last 3 days.
Yeah, but
I'm not mad at him, but you have KD and Steph isn't that far removed from Luka and LeBron in terms of your odds greatly increased. For the next 3 or 4 months. I'm just not a judgment. KD's a grown man; he can do what he wants. I'm just surprised that he was that adamant, that resolute that he wouldn't play with Steph again.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, Steph and Draymond are tight too, and he's sort of
I know
an institution within an institution in Golden State. Last thing on Kevin Durant before we go to the Warriors. Kevin Durant, I don't think he's long for the Phoenix Suns. I think he's going to look around and go, "Oh man, I'm fighting it out with the Kings and the Spurs for that last play-in spot. This sucks." And he's eventually going to move on, as is his want since leaving Oklahoma City. At what point, he's a generational talent, one of the greatest players that's ever played the game. Is there any taint to his legacy because he has hopped around so much and will again?
I think it's got to be part of his consideration. I'm going to say some things that are true that sound like I'm trolling or putting down Kevin Durant. I'm not. It is true that he's really, really competitive. It's true that he's really sensitive. It's true that he had burner, then Twitter, now X accounts where he was arguing with people who have 12 followers. He cares about this stuff, right? He cares about how people view him. He does. And I was thinking about this and talking to a not a GM, but an executive about this yesterday, who's probably not a big Durant guy based on the stuff he said to me. But if Kevin Durant stays in Oklahoma City, right, just never leaves, if he knew then what none of us knew, which is that Sam Presti is a wizard of a GM, and that Presti would have found a way to surround him with the right pieces, even if Russ and James is already gone. And he wins 2 or 3 or 4 rings, which I think he would have. We consider, I think, KD a top 4 to 8 player of all time instead of whatever he is, 8 to 15 or 16. If he goes somewhere, if he stays in Phoenix, John, he's not going to win. I don't think he's going to win anything. And if he leaves, I think he correctly knows that people are going to say accurately, he had to go to Golden State to win. Then he tried to go and team up in Brooklyn. Couldn't even pull that off. Then he teamed up with guys in Phoenix. Couldn't even pull that off. So even if he goes to the Rockets or the Heat or Memphis, he's not going to Memphis, but whatever. And I'm not even sure it's tarnished. There's a reality here about who he is.
If he goes to the Rockets, then that's guaranteed championship because those guys just locked them in.
It might be.
I love the Rockets. Let's go on to you know what? Just the last thing about the legacy thing. I hated when he left Oklahoma City, super teaming a super team to go to Golden
City. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Right. I wanted them to keep that core together and fight. And in retrospect, I wish he had stayed. But anyway, he moved on. All right, let's move on.
Can I just say, the minute I know Aaron put this in there, I wrote about this when it happened. The minute Steph won a ring without KD. Was smaller stakes, kind of Tom Brady winning in Tampa Bay without Belichick. Now you know who's more important.
Yeah, the bonus championship. Everybody, I mean, look,
Yeah.
Steph won a championship before KD got there, and he won one afterwards, and his legacy is by far cemented. Okay, so now we go to Golden State, where Kevin Durant didn't want to go back to. Jimmy Butler did want to go there because it got him out of the Heat. And the more I thought about this, Bill, you asked me about this last night when we did our emergency podcast about like who wins here. The Heat win because they get off of Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler wins again. Jimmy Butler ended. I don't know if it's going to work out. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to fit in with Draymond, if they'll love each other, and it's going to be like a stepbrothers situation with Will Ferrell. And they're like, "Are we best friends now?" And they're like, "Yes, we are." I don't know, but I do know that Jimmy Butler got 2 years and $121 million, and he gets to play with Steph Curry. And there's a non-zero chance that this thing could potentially work.
Yeah.
If not this season, then next season. So I do like this for Jimmy Butler. For the Warriors, I think he's a better player than Andrew Wiggins. Dennis Schroeder wasn't working out. Thank you, Kyle Anderson. You move on. It's a protected first. Who cares? I like this better for them as a basketball team. The fit, though, is like, okay, you're going to need some more shooting than just Steph Curry because it's not like Jimmy's a shooter.
No, he's not. We obviously hit this yesterday in the aftermath. It's nice to have time to process and get 2 hours sleep and kind of think about, have some coffee. Yep. Here's what I've thought over the last, I don't even know what it is, 18 or not even math, 8 hours, whatever it's been. John, I'm a hot mess. But here's what I thought. I think Steph Curry is so incredible that other people in his orbit have gotten credit for what they haven't deserved on the levels of Jordan or LeBron or Messi or whoever you want to point to. I personally do not think Bob Myers is the genius of a GM people think that he is. That Steve Kerr is I think Steve Kerr's great, but not at the level that people think that he is. There was a story in the New York Times Magazine a few years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but it was about Lacob and the owners of the Warriors. And it was basically the headline on the front of the magazine. The cover was basically, we're smarter than everybody. I don't think they are when it comes to basketball. I think it's all Steph. And I think that when you are that arrogant to mistakes, you're orbiting a star rather than thinking you are the star. You don't develop players properly. You don't draft the right players. You do this parallel track that doesn't work. You let Draymond Green punch people in the face and you don't rein that in. And you wake up one day and you realize we're not actually as good at this as we thought. It's all Steph Curry. There's no plan after Steph Curry, and we're desperate. And that desperation, that misunderstanding for all the glory years, why you were glorious. It wasn't you. It wasn't Steve. It wasn't Bob Myers. It was Steph Curry. It was largely Steph. Means you just got to look around and do whatever the hell you can. They almost got Durant. They couldn't. And so I think in that context, it's a great move to get Jimmy Butler because there is a world where it works, but it's also a reminder of how much the Warriors have failed putting around Steph Curry what they should have to make sure this continued, and they didn't have to take a gamble on a guy that was just suspended with the Miami Heat.
Yeah, this is a third piece that Steph could desperately use because we saw the hockey lineups where they're just doing line shifts.
Oh, but that too.
And
right.
So that's out the window now, mercifully. Now you can look at this and go, okay, if Jimmy is healthy and Jimmy is engaged, Jimmy, I believe, will be engaged because he's gotten to a place where now he gets to play with a generational superstar and he's going to want to show everybody that, hey, I'm still a winner and he's awesome in the playoffs and that whole bit. If Jimmy is engaged, that's step one. If Jimmy is healthy, that's step two. My friend Ian Carmel, who's a comedian and a noted Blazers fan, put this out on Blue Sky about the whole Jimmy and Draymond dynamic, and I wanted to see what you thought about this. He said there's two scenarios for Jimmy and Draymond. Either A, powerful duo, or B, they're both dead in a week. There's no other option. And I kind of think that's what it is. It's like either these two guys are going to look at each other and be like, let's go. Like what I said to you last night, we can go be mean girls to somebody else together rather than to each other. If that's the case, Bill, I like this. But my question is, so your lineup now, your starting lineup is Steph and Draymond and Jimmy and Kuminga, but Kuminga's not a shooter either. So now are you going to go small and play Buddy Hield and or Pajemski, or are you going to throw Looney in there and only have one shooter on the floor?
I think it's Hield is where I would.
So you're starting Draymond at center,
and you're just going small. And maybe that's. I mean, it's Steve Kerr, so he'll do whatever's the wrong answer. So let's see what Kerr does, and then we'll know what needs to happen. But it's true, dude. It's true. I like Steve too.
I'm the Steve defender on this show, but okay.
I like Steve. I got a text from a guy. One of the guys was like, he wrote something so mean about Steve that I've sort of paraphrased and not read verbatim. I wrote, I like Steve in this, and he wrote, this is an executive. I like Steve too. But to answer your question, I do think that's what it'll be in the closing scenarios. And if they have to make the playoffs, so the play-in game. I mean, if they have meaningful basketball games, I think that will be how they'll go eventually, because you have to have that shooting out there.
We should note that the Jimmy trade, in terms of like their playoff expectancy, they went from about, according to the BPI, about a 40% chance of making the play-in to a 60% chance of making the play-in. So like a significant bump by getting Jimmy Butler. Now here's another component. A lot of people had linked the Golden State Warriors to Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic plays for the Bulls. The Bulls have done not a good job of being a front office for quite some time now. It took them a long time to get off Alex Caruso. Once they did, they didn't get a pick from Oklahoma City, who has all the picks. They just moved Zach LaVine. Okay, it's fine. They got off of the Zach LaVine contract. A lot of people, you and I included, and also producer Aaron, anticipated that the Bulls would move off of Nikola Vucevic as well as they continue their tanking effort. One of the landing spots that would have made sense, and evidently and reportedly they have engaged or did engage in conversations, was the Golden State Warriors. Had Nikola Vucevic been moved to the Warriors, Bill, that would have solved two problems. One, he plays center. Two, he stretches the floor, which is adding some more shooting to a Warriors starting lineup, which is a problem that we just identified. As we're sitting here right now, post-trade deadline at 3:35 Eastern, Nikola Vucevic still plays for the Bulls.
Help me. It's the most Bulls thing ever. I can't. And by the way, I'm not a Bulls fan because when you cover, at least for me, when I cover this, it just sort of. But I grew up a Bulls fan. I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa, and the Chicago suburbs, and back and forth, and the Jordan years, and so I'd like to have a little bit of I like to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they're awful. I'm sure when Nico gets fired in Dallas, they'll hire him as their special advisor so he can help with trade recommendations. They're terribly run. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know.
I would have, if you had told me last second they come to an accord, Golden State moves out whomever and brings in Nikola Vucevic. Now all of a sudden I'm like,
right.
We have to rethink, because you've got enough defense on the Warriors that Vooch isn't a great defender, but he is a very good offensive and useful offensive player. That would have been something.
I still look. You and I got asked on HQ. We were told, we were instructed, you only get to give a one-word answer, and it's Bulls or Warriors. You got or not Bulls. Sorry, Heat or Warriors.
It was the Heat.
Bulls. Yeah. Heat or Warriors. Pick one. And I went with the Heat because of where they are in the playoffs. They are currently at the 6th spot. That could certainly change. Mm-hmm. But if you told me that the Warriors were likely to finish in the top 6 and avoid the Russian roulette reality of the play-in, I think I could get on board for some optimism, right? Jimmy gets in rhythm. He's got to be healthy, but let's just be optimistic and say that he plays, and like he did last year in the playoffs for Miami against the Celtics. Then playoff Jimmy is a real thing. You throw him in with Steph. You've got Dre. We know that this is a Warriors team that historically always they're just better when Draymond plays versus when he doesn't. But the fact they got to slog their way through the play-in, that you don't know what's going to happen, that you do have this sort of uncertainty of Jimmy Butler, you're right. There's a reason for optimism even without getting any other pieces. I just have trouble thinking that it's likely to pay off.
I think moving forward, like this season, they've got a lot of obstacles in their way. Next season, if you can add some more shooters and a functional big, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, maybe. But this season,
but Jimmy's old.
Yeah, he is. But again, motivated Jimmy Butler is a different kind
chip
of
on the shoulder.
Butler. Yeah. Let's take a break. And then on the other side, we'll pick this back up. We'll discuss where we think the Warriors fall in the Western Conference pecking order. We'll go through some of the other trades that happened at the trade deadline today. The Cavs made an interesting move that I wanted to get into a little bit. And then Brandon Ingram got moved last night. Bill and I talked about that. Oh, and the Lakers. The Lakers added Mark Williams. We got to get into that as well. Don't go anywhere. A lot more to come on our trade deadline special. This is Beyond the Arc.
A 16 beats a 1 from sweet to elite to the Final Four.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Thanks for joining us live on YouTube. We are also a podcast. You can find us wherever you get your favorite shows. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And then if you're listening on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment. And if you're on watching YouTube right now, leave us a comment and we'll be sure to throw it up on the show. All right, so back to the Warriors, Bill. Let's just look through the Western Conference pecking order. As I said, it greatly improved their odds to make the playoffs. They go from 40% chance to make the playoffs to 60% chance to make the playoffs, but it still only puts them, according to the FanDuel odds, at the 9th best odds to win the Western Conference. So
that sounds right.
Do you like them better than the Mavs or the Wolves or the Clippers?
I like them better. So I said this yesterday. I mean, again, if you watched yesterday, you know this. If you're new to the show, thank you. I opened the season writing a column that the Clippers' new arena was beautiful and they're a bunch of idiots. So I have certainly swung and missed on the Clippers this year. So take this with a giant
on the Warriors. I think they had the Warriors out, and it looks like they probably make it.
Take a giant grain of salt. Yes, the teams that I doubt the most are Phoenix, and then I don't want to decide. But if I have to decide, I might even be Clippers dropping all the way down because heart would I want to be true, but De'Aaron Fox looks so good, especially in the first half.
He looks
like that
great.
sort of immediate fit with Wemby. So give me the Spurs pulling a miracle. I think the Warriors will be in. I do. Yeah, I'm looking.
Then you have the Suns or the Kings. You have the Suns and the Kings out in that scenario, unless it's the Clippers.
Yeah, I think it's where the Clippers falling down and somebody else moving up. I think it's the Kings. I mean, I want to give it time for Zach LaVine to maybe that works, but they haven't looked awesome in the very, very small. Time
I mean, if you want to touch on that real quick, the new look Kings last night. So we on this show have said a lot that the Magic are offensively challenged. The new look Kings last night in Zach LaVine's debut gave up 130 points to the Orlando Magic. You might have to start Keon Ellis because at present, that team, they traded for Valanciunas as well. They got 2 second-round picks. That team has 0 defense in that starting lineup right now.
What is the dog years, Trent? Right, if you're gonna, or like euros to dollars, 130 some points scored by the Magic means you would have given up to an average offense, what, 250? I mean, that is terrible.
When I saw that, I was like, oh no, Sacramento, I feel so bad for you guys. And now I understand why, in terms of who's going to claim that last spot, why all the sports books have the Suns, the Kings, and the Spurs fighting it out, 3 teams for that one
spot. Give me the Spurs, dude. And there's no pressure on the Spurs. Maybe. There's no pressure. The future's bright. This is great.
Vibes are good. Everybody's having a good time.
Senior vibes reporter. The vibes are, John, get out of my lane. Get out of my lane. Right. Excuse me. The vibes are good. Sorry.
Let's while we're talking vibes, let's go to the other team in LA, the Los Angeles Lakers, who made another trade. First, they go and make the Luka trade, and then because they didn't have to overpay in terms of draft capital, I think people sometimes, again, we don't really give enough credit for how much Anthony Davis is worth. Like, yes, they get to hold on to some of their draft capital, which they then flipped in this other trade with the Charlotte Hornets. So they end up, and that wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for AD being so valuable. That's all I'm saying. But they go and they get Mark Williams in exchange for Dalton Knecht, who had varying returns, but he is a rookie. Cam Reddish, who has fallen out of favor with every team he's ever played for. The 2031 unprotected first that everybody was clamoring for that should have been in the Mavs deal. They didn't have to put it in the Mavs deal. It ends up in the Hornets deal, plus the 2030 swap in exchange for Mark Williams. Now, for casuals who aren't exactly, I'm sure you're not a casual if you're listening to the show or watching it right now. Mark Williams, often injured, missed about half of the games that he's played in since getting into the NBA. But when he's played offensively, great lob threat. He's going to look real nice running with Luka and LeBron. Defensively, not the best rim protector. Could do a little bit of work there. Not the best.
Maybe garbage. Is that would that be a more accurate way to?
Well, there's some defensive questions with this new Lakers lineup. We'll say that, but I like the idea of young Mark. This is a bet on the future and actually the present of Mark Williams that he can, on the same timeline with Luka, grow and develop.
Oh, here's what I will say. I saw that NBA Twitter and a bunch of our colleagues around the country were the sort of an instant reaction was Pelinka did it again. Charlotte are a bunch of idiots. This is amazing for the Lakers. I think you walked us through the nuance.
Charlotte too.
I do too. By the way, if you look at the picks that the new GM in Charlotte has put together,
buddy, they are loaded, and I'm loving
it. It's legit. So, and this, maybe we can do a deep dive on this in a podcast next week or whenever, maybe next week's All-Star, but at some point, because I think Presti, and somebody told me, I clearly just showed there's a path here to being, and the Rockets have done it. A bunch of teams are doing it, right? And now Charlotte has this really nice, they just have picks galore.
They're loaded.
So, Mark Williams is an interesting player. Yeah. He's obviously offensively going to be a perfect fit for Luka and for that team on offense. This is already a Lakers team that's garbage on defense. He doesn't add it all to that. And excuse me, I saw something pop up, so I started searching. There was ample times where no one pays attention because who's watching Charlotte games, where the local broadcasters at halftime and postgame were just going at Mark Williams for his lack of effort. And that is rare. And that is, for people that don't know, local broadcasters are employed by the teams, and they don't criticize without permission, or they're no longer the broadcasters. So I was sort of stunned. There are real now, it's the Lakers, it's LeBron. Maybe he's going to put in more effort. I don't know. But not just the defensive liabilities, not just the fact that he doesn't play a lot, but also the fact that he clearly was frustrating the hell out of his organization for just not even trying in games.
Well, some of those games, I mean, in fairness to Mark Williams, a lot of those games ends up being blowouts. Look who he's playing next to. The example that he has of LaMelo Ball, who's just jacking up shots willy-nilly like nothing matters.
This isn't me saying it. This is like very, I don't want to be rude, but the regional guys are usually pretty sycophantic.
Oh, yeah.
There. And producer Aaron is saying the Charlotte broadcasters are crazy homers too, which I don't watch a lot of Charlotte games.
They do.
It could work. It's not a slam dunk as long as in the short term.
Defensively, I'll just throw a number out at you. Rim protection has not been great for Mark Williams. Opponents are shooting 68% at the rim against him, which is 9th worst among guys who have guarded that many shots against the rim. So that's a problem. There's no doubt about it. However, He's 7'2". He's young. He's a
He's
lob
23.
threat. He's a good rebounder. I have long been a fan as an NBA nerd of Mark Williams and have wanted to see him play and be healthy. And in Charlotte, alongside Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, I was like, okay, yeah, I could maybe see what they're trying to do here. In LA, next to LeBron and Luka, yes, that whole starting unit has defensive issues, but I think I think you might have to like move Rui out and put in Vanderbilt or Dorian Finney-Smith, just to have a little bit of defense in the starting lineup. But I hear you, but I still like it like as a medium-term, long-term bet.
We are totally aligned. And it's a great point that if you're Rob Pelinka and you've just signed Luka Doncic and he's 25, and again, there's no guarantee Luka's going to stay, but that is certainly the expectation in LA, right? 2026, player option, long-term deal. I think he's going to stay. Now you pair a 25-year-old all-universe player with a 23-year-old who has so much upside. Now, here's my other thing, and producer Aaron tipped this off to me, but he's not just a guy that's injured all the time. He's a big man who has had back and foot problems. And that is a major concern. It doesn't mean you don't do the deal. It doesn't mean there's not optimism, but this guy's only played 85 games so far in his first 3 seasons. And I know that there's season to go, but Greg Oden played 82 games in his first 3 seasons, missed the entire first year. So it's just he hasn't played much, John.
He hasn't.
I like
missed
it.
About half his games.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah, he's missed he in 211 possible games, Bill, he's missed 105 of them. So that is a concern. And again, as you look at this Lakers starting lineup, okay, LeBron and Luka and Austin Reeves locked in. Previously, Rui Hachimura starting, and now you've got Mark Williams. My suggestion of, okay, you're for sure starting LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves. That's guaranteed. And now Mark Williams. So the question is, are you for sure starting Rui Hachimura, or do you move somebody like Jared Vanderbilt or Dorian Finney-Smith into the starting lineup because you want a little bit of defense? And producer Aaron's question then immediately was, well, now what about the shooting concerns with Vando? And I was like, okay, yeah, but like you got to make some concession somewhere, right? If your defense is going to be horrendous, your 2 best defenders are the guys that I just mentioned. So like maybe it would be better to have Rui off I don't know. All I'm saying is on the whole, I'm in on whatever this is. I want to
with you. And Pelinka at the press conference that you watched and I went to a couple days ago to introduce Luka talked about the God, doesn't it feel like it was 3 months ago?
Back in the year 2007.
Oh my God. I'm so glad the deadline is. Yes. I just had a GM send me, I always send GMs congrats notes later, to try to someone take my calls and because great job if you're watching. And one of them is a joke, just sent me a congrats note that it's over for me. Thank you.
For everybody.
It's pretty funny. So Pelinka was pretty straightforward and the plan that the Lakers have, and they telegraphed it, Pelinka talked about it, is exactly what you're saying. They might be able to be competitive and do something in this year, the next year, right? With LeBron and Luka and now Williams. And they're not turning away from that. That's great. But they're trying to make sure they think long-term, and if the long-term has some upside in the short-term, and Mark Williams, I think, applies, if he can be healthy, great long-term addition. Maybe you want, someone in there defensively at that position too, or a rim protector you can sort of swap in, but whatever. I love what the Lakers are building. They're probably not going to make the finals. It feels like a conference finals run would be like a nice outcome, but not a crazy thing to say anymore. But there's so much runway now. It's okay if it doesn't work this year, where it wasn't 3 days ago.
It's interesting because you and I were sort of down on them and saying that they were sort of middle of the pack. Now, all of a sudden after this, they've got the 3rd best odds to win the West, Bill, after Oklahoma City, who are, by the way, Oklahoma City, everybody's like, they didn't do anything. Chet Holmgren just came off the injury report. That's their big addition.
Didn't do anything. Who's saying that?
Some people are like, should they have made a move? They've got all these
that person needs
Chet
some
Holmgren,
sleep.
Chet Holmgren having being off the injury report and coming back to a defense that's like an all-time great defense is really fantastic. But now all of a sudden, Bill, the Lakers, 3rd best odds to win the West after Oklahoma City and the Nuggets. It's the Lakers. And you know what? When I saw that, I was like, I looked at it sideways and then I went, okay, actually I can get with that because the Rockets are inexperienced and they don't have a closer, and the Grizzlies are deep and talented, but is Ja healthy? So yeah, I could see this.
So I think I said this with you, or maybe not, but to me, it's clearly the Thunder are the team to beat, right?
Yep.
They're 1A, and there's a lot of separation. I will say this: you are all in on the Thunder, and I am with you.
I am.
But they haven't really done anything in the playoffs as a group, and sometimes that can mean that they're probably good enough. But if they lost in the conference finals, it wouldn't surprise me. Is all I'm saying. Like it wouldn't be the most shocking outcome.
Absent PJ Washington going absolutely out of his mind last year, like they slowed down Luka and Kyrie in that series, and PJ Washington beat them. And I guess you just like tip your hat and go, okay, but you learned a valuable lesson.
I mean, okay, so you're alternate universe theorying me that they're in the but whatever they didn't, and I like alternate universe conversations. My point is, we both think it's the Thunder, but if the Thunder don't do it, there's a reasonable reason why. I don't think it's going to happen, but they're still mostly young, right? That's a young team, and they haven't made the moves because they think they're good enough, but they haven't proven they are. All right. If it's not the Thunder, 3 or 4 days ago, it was, for me, it was Denver, Memphis. I'm respecting you, the Rockets. I actually don't buy that. I think they're too young.
I hear you. I think you're right.
The Lakers are in that group now. The Lakers went from to they are easily in that after the Thunder. They're in that tier after that, and that's amazing. Congrats, Rob Pelinka.
They leveled up. Congrats to Rob Pelinka. I'm glad you mentioned him because we're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, producer Aaron had just posed, I'm going to call it a provocative question about one Rob Pelinka and what kind of job he's actually done here with the Lakers. And we're going to run that past Bill on the other side. Don't go anywhere. A lot more to talk about, including all the other ancillary draft trades and moves that happened today that we haven't even got to, that we will get to coming up. This is Beyond the Arc.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
Wonderful goal.
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Back to Beyond the Arc. You can find us live on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, the bell symbol. When you click on that, you get notified when we go live. We did a ton of live shows this week. We're going to do a ton more coming up as the regular season funnels into the postseason, then definitely once the playoffs get going. So you don't want to miss out on that. All right. Last thing on the Lakers here, Bill, as we discuss how much they've leveled up, and now all of a sudden they're in the conversation to maybe play Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals if it isn't the Nuggets or some other team. Producer Aaron threw this in the chat. And I squinted at it sideways. I was like, come on. And then I was like, that's actually very provocative. What kind of case do you give Rob Pelinka to win Executive of the Year now?
Oh, I love this conversation because it's the one award that we don't vote for, that I don't get to vote for. The actual executives vote. And there's so much pettiness. It's a bunch of Mean Girls clicks.
It is.
Okay. So let
me lay out the case.
Okay.
So on one hand, he gets Luka, and everybody goes, "That's the most incredible trade. I can't believe it." On the other hand, people are angry at Nico.
So
and now
here's my
like
answer.
Rob just kind of stumbled into it.
Provocative question, provocative answer. Okay. Are you ready? Yeah. And I know at least one executive who watches because, as I read, he told me that one time. So if you're they're working right now. But here's the thing: if you're watching on repeat, I wanted to go to Nico Harrison, but for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's the executive of the year for the Lakers. No, I don't think it's Pelinka. And here's my theory. Let me run my theory of this by you, and you tell me if you think this is legitimate or not. We don't vote on this, so this is recommendations of the actual execs who vote. Every other award is voted on by the media. Okay. Every award that I vote for is a regular, and you vote for is a regular season award, and it's this season. So when I'm trying to figure out if it's Shea or Jokic, it is not appropriate, I think, to factor in past years what you didn't get. I don't think that's true with Executive of the Year. I think if you develop some guy and he develops in year 4, but you knew it and it took time, you should get credit for it. I think you can do body of work, and I think you can have a longer timeline. So for me, it's not even a question that it's Sam Presti. Like, it's not even a question.
If we're doing body of work and a timeline, it's Sam Presti now and forever in perpetuity.
A lot of guys don't like him, though. Like, there's a lot of jealous, and he's chilled out, but he used to rub people the wrong way a little bit in negotiations. So,
and I could see why. I could see why that might be true. Why he might not get it as a consequence. And similarly, that Rob might just be like, "Oh, well, he was just the guy in the right place at the right time." Right. And now he takes the extra pieces that he didn't to Dallas and moves him over to Charlotte and gets another useful player. It's an interesting question that producer Aaron posed to us, is all I'm saying.
I know it's really, I think it's, I love it. Like, what about Leon in New York? I mean, if the Knicks finished third, I don't know.
That's a good one. Getting Cat, they definitely won the Cat trade. There's no doubt about that. The Mikal Bridges trade, I think it works because he's good, but 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, who I like, is a lot.
It looks worse.
Let's do the other trades that we haven't gotten to yet. Last night, I think we were both on HQ, but I don't think we talked about this one on, who knows. Anyway, Brandon Ingram got traded. He goes to the Raptors for Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk and a 2026 first-round pick. Bruce is an expiring deal. Olynyk has 1 year left. Look, Brandon Ingram, he wanted a contract this past offseason. David Griffin said, no, I'm not sure that this is going to work with the new CBA. There was sort of a limited trade market here. He was out since early December with an ankle issue. He's only played 18 games here. Everybody was injured for New Orleans this year. I think as I look at this, Bill, I squinted at it and I went, both teams did fine.
Yeah, fine. I think I did. You know what? I got called back into HQ. I did too. Go back for this. I had poured a glass of wine. I thought I can have one glass, and I was about to sip it. Like,
I did the same thing. I cracked a beer, and they were like, "Can you get on?" I think I just missed doing the hit with you because I was getting ready. But anyway, yes, this was the late one last night.
So I don't know how either side did, but I think both sides' reasoning makes sense. I think for David Griffin, the trio, I saw this and I meant to look it up and I just haven't had time. The trio of DeJounte Murray and Ingram and Zion apparently never played together. They never played together. They didn't play a single minute.
That's a bummer.
It is a bummer. And the Zion Ingram duo never came to any fruition. So the minute that New Orleans made the decision, look, we're not gonna keep Brandon. We're not gonna pay Brandon what he wants. He had to go. And if you're the Raptors and you think he can eventually stay healthy and you take the young core and the draft pick you're going to have and the reality that it's hard to to recruit to Toronto, Canada, I don't hate it. And we'll see. I understand why that's a move they would make. So and for New Orleans, they took a swing. And by the way, there was a time, I should look this up and memorize it because I always get it wrong. 2 or 3 years ago, we're in January. They were the best team in a really competitive Western Conference, and then Zion got hurt again, and it fell apart. Like, there were signs this could work. It just never did.
Yeah, I think cap constraint wise for the Pelicans, this is not surprising. We've been waiting for them to find a suitor and a trade partner for Brandon Ingram for a while now. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Zion moving forward. You know, I think that they just look at it and they go, we like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and, like, you know, maybe Jordan Hawkins and Jose Alvarado. And, like, it might be let's wait to see what happens with Zion situation. From the Raptors side, real quick, you know, I'm a little Raptors curious, right?
You are.
Like, I just want to throw this out there. Okay.
Right.
Like, cause some people were like, I don't know what this core is. I want to ask you what it is. Cause they're 7-3 over the last 10. They lost last night. Fine. I have mentioned multiple times that Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, who missed a massive chunk of the season and isn't playing back-to-backs yet. Getting those 3 guys together has been a chore. Brandon Ingram, again, only played 18 games this year. However, on paper, when you also have like a Jakob Poeltl at center in the Eastern Conference, if you get those guys out there, I don't hate that, Bill.
And this is, as you know, apparently just a shockingly deep draft where there are going to be. Yeah, I'm told. So I had a scout who went and watched. I'm totally going to blank it. Cooper Flagg play, and I was like, "Oh, is he legit?" And his answer was interesting. He's like, "He's legit, and he's a sure thing, and you can't miss." But this scout told me, this scout's view is there will be better players in the draft. You just don't know who they are. So you're going to have this sort of rock solid player who he thinks won't be an MVP playing at Duke, but you have all these, apparently there's a bunch of guys, and some of the view is a lot of them are going to hit. So let's say Toronto hits, say Masai hits on one of them. I'm a lot more optimistic about the Raptors conference aside than I am, say, the Trailblazers, who have been doing this for a while and have been playing well lately too. I like what Toronto has. And I like Brandon Ingram if he can be healthy.
You bring up Masai. Masai ended up moving last year, Pascal Siakam out. And it's kind of like they took a gap year on Pascal Siakam's salary and tried to like reboot this thing on the fly. And, you know, I wasn't an RJ guy. RJ has had a better season when he's been out there. Scotty Barnes is very talented. And I love very much an Emmanuel Quickley believer. It's just, can Emmanuel Quickley stay on the floor? which is the same thing with Brandon Ingram. I like Brandon Ingram when he plays, a little light defensively, but still he's useful. So it's a health thing, and it's the Eastern Conference. Anything can happen in the East.
Here's the thing. It doesn't work if they don't have event. Let's say that everybody's healthy and everybody grows into what is a reasonable sort of on the reasonable trajectory they're on. They still have to have a top 10 player. Like they don't have a Shea. They
Correct.
don't have what we think Amen Thompson's going to be, right? But that's probably in this draft. And if they can get the right pick and they can draft properly, that's the thing. They set it up. It's alchemy. They have all the ingredients they need, but the special secret ingredient, if they can land that in the draft, I think Toronto can be onto something. But it's a big
They have
if.
like
It's
4
luck.
good kids off the bench that most people don't know about that are like just really solid defenders. It's kind of feeling without the draft pick haul a little OKC-ish over there, where they're like, we're just going to get some young, good, talented players and hope that they can get on the court. Let's go through some of the other trades that happened today.
Okay.
Start with the Cavs, best team in the Eastern Conference.
I love this trade.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought this up. Cavs get DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is having a career best season shooting the ball, 19 points per game, and a career best season shooting it from 3, just a tick over 39% from 3.
Yeah.
We move on from Karis LeVert. George Niang, the old school minivan, he had previously kind of fallen out of the rotation, and they also send out 3 second-round picks and 2 pick swaps. I like this. I mean, Karis LeVert is a useful player, but DeAndre Hunter, I think, as your 5th starter, your 5th best player,
Right.
I think he's going to fit in pretty nicely.
And there's so much shooting on this team. And there already was so much shooting on this team. So part of the reason I like it too, so Kobe Altman is the GM there, right? And he's built a pretty nice operation. He's drafted well. Like you and I both like Mobley. They obviously got Mitchell to stick around. So you're not giving away the universe, but he recognizes, correct, there's a window here. The Cavs are really good. Are they 73 win? They're not on pace for that anymore. They've kind of come back to earth. They're not that. But I still think that they're good enough to win the East. They're not my favorite. I would take Boston, whatever. We'll see. They're going to play the games. I think the Knicks are really good. We'll see if Milwaukee can figure it out. If you have a window and you're Cleveland and you're giving away pieces that either aren't part of the rotation or aren't really that significant, and second-round picks, and you can go get somebody that makes you even deeper at the thing that is the definition of what you do, which is shooting and efficiency. I love it. And I have been waiting on this guy, DeAndre Hunter, to be traded for like 78 years. It's the 78th year in a row, I think, where I've been told the guy might be traded. And finally,
he's the new John Collins.
He got there. He is the new John Collins.
DeAndre Hunter, I had always liked the idea of DeAndre Hunter more than I liked DeAndre Hunter. This season was the first season that I was like, oh, this is kind of like a little sprinkling of the DeAndre Hunter that was promised coming out of college. I still want more from him on other parts of the floor, but he is a good defender, or at least a willing defender. And I think like he can play some minutes for you at power forward as needed. He's a big body. And again, he's scoring the ball really well and shooting the ball really well from distance. So that's a situation where you're like, okay, yeah, he's a better addition as your 5th guy. Plus, I think they look at it and go, it's essentially, you weren't going to play. George Niang is going to become unplayable once the playoffs come. So it's basically a Hunter for Karis LeVert swap. Then Okoro goes to the bench. Ty Jerome's been really good this season, and he's a useful piece. I think you look at it and go like, this is a net win exactly for what you said. It's just basically picks and LeVert. I'm okay with that.
So Atlanta is an organization I've written about a lot. And I had
little
written
free fall here.
Landry doesn't. I mean, I like Landry Fields a lot, the GM, but I had written when Quinn got hired. I don't think we were working together yet. That the reality that basically Landry is really close with the owner's son, and the owner's son has a lot of sway in basketball ops, and people that maybe it's not the best front office, and maybe there's some ownership meddling. Right? It's very Ishbia-like, not as bad. Do you have any optimism in Atlanta? And if you're Trae Young, do you even want to be there anymore? Because
that's interesting because
what are they doing?
Earlier in the season, you and I were like, hey, the Hawks are like out, and they had good wins against Cleveland and the Celtics, and they made some noise in the cup and all that stuff. Jalen Johnson's their best player. Jalen Johnson got hurt, and it's hard to paper that over. And I think once Jalen Johnson got hurt, now they've lost what? They've won 1 game. They've lost 9 of their last 10.
I think it's 9 of 10.
Trae Young can only do so much. We should mention Bogdan Bogdanović was another guy that everybody was waiting for him to get moved. He got moved today to the Clippers. Bogdan Bogdanović and 3 seconds to the Clippers in exchange for Terrence Mann, who's on a cost control deal. And even if they don't like Bones Highland, who's also in that move, I understand why they ended up moving and kicking the tires a little bit on Terrence Mann. You're right, though. If you're Trae Young, this is a lost season for you. You're not going to be an all-star unless you're an injury replacement. Jalen Johnson went down. There was a moment there where you're like, oh, maybe we could be a little plucky. That's over.
So here's the other thing. We've talked about this in the context of De'Aaron Fox and Rich Paul kind of getting ahead of things. And I don't have Trae Young's contract in front of me, so I don't even know the details of it. But where are you going to go? I mean, the Spurs were a great fit, but they've already got somebody that makes that. I mean, if you're Trae Young and you decide you want to be gone in the summer, where are you? You're not going to the Lakers. You're not going to the Spurs. I don't want you if I'm the Rockets or the Thunder. I don't need you if I'm the Knicks or the Cavs. I'm just going through good teams. I think the Celtics are going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's a really, he is a talented guy. People sort of have very strong views one way or the other about Trae Young and whether he's a winner, but he's a talented basketball player.
Yeah, producer Aaron makes a good point too about like the Hawks better make the playoffs because of their whole draft pick situation. So,
that's right.
Yeah,
Landry, buddy.
Yeah, so Trae Young, $46 million next year, $49 million player option in 26-27. That is a lot of money for Trae Young, who and again, you and I have credited him this year for playing in a different way, where Quinn Snyder had challenged him to be more of a distributor and less of a just like, I'm looking for my shot each and every time down the floor. He's been an awesome passer this year. He has, I thought, made his teammates better, but there's just like, I'm not sure he's on the same timeline as Onyeka Okongwu and Jalen Johnson, and
which is why I think you don't. I'm not even sure you want it if you're Atlanta. If you're going to kind of do a rebuild or a retool,
Yeah, it's not great. Also, by the way, trade deadline comes and goes yet again. Clint Capella still in Atlanta. Can't get rid of that guy.
That's funny.
Let's just talk about a couple of more things that didn't happen today while we're at it. Players who did not move, as we mentioned: KD, Vooch, Clint Capella, Bill. All the Blazers still there. John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, Walker Kessler still in Utah. Cam Johnson didn't go anywhere. Any of those?
Yeah, that's surprising.
Any of those jump out at you as like, what are we doing here?
So I thought Cam Johnson would definitely move, but I had heard sort of, and I guess it's true that Brooklyn felt pretty good about sort of what they'd already done. Yeah, I mean, I guess all of it a little bit. What I don't know, and I need to get answers to when we're done is that because those GMs sort of made a decision that we're not moving things, or is it because other people were just focused on other deals and they didn't get – it feels like everything got held up for a while on this Durant, Jimmy Butler thing while everybody kind of waited to see what was going to happen.
We talked about the Blazers yesterday. The Blazers might have like screwed themselves by being too competent, where like they've won a bunch of games recently and now all of a sudden like their young pieces are learning how to – there's always a school of thought. Like there's the contention between – the tankers. Hello, how you doing? Here I am.
Are you one of those
who saw the
being a Sixers fan?
Just like bottom out, baby. Get as bad as you possibly can. And then there's the other group of who always go, and I have plenty of friends like this, friends in the media as well, who go, well, these kids have to learn how to win eventually, and you're stunting their growth and blah blah blah. I'm of the what are you doing, Blazers? You should have bottomed this thing out and at least unplug DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams for me.
We had this talk the other day, and I agree, but I do think that if you lose too much, you learn to be losers. And so I think that winning is better than not if you have a young core that's been around a little bit. But yes, I mean, but here the thing is, DeAndre Ayton might be Bradley Beal, but even worse. I mean, does anybody want DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, does anybody want DeAndre?
I mean,
well, you know what? The Suns might want the Suns. In retrospect, that Nurkic, deal did not work out for them. The Grizzlies moved on from Marcus Smart at the very end of the deadline. The Wolves didn't do anything. The Magic didn't do anything. The Blazers didn't do anything. The Nuggets, remember like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, when you and I were like, maybe they got to move on from MPJ.
I just looked up his contract, actually. I was just looking it up.
And now you and I are like, no, they're pretty solidly like in contention in the Western Conference as is, and they look like they've kind of figured things out.
But can we just go back? It's because they have Jokic. It's like this. It's like the. I'm telling you, Jokic is what Steph was a few years ago.
Fair.
They're not that good. He's that good.
My guy Jordan Clarkson couldn't get to Denver. It's unfortunate.
That's what you wanted. Right. That's the move you wanted.
I really wanted it. All right, so Bill and I have got more NBA basketball talk coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports HQ. That is our streaming network. Be sure to catch that. We'll be back with more trade deadline stuff. I'm sure that we'll talk more about Luka. Anthony Davis, Bill, was supposed to make his debut tonight. That's going to be held off, it looks like, until Saturday for the Mavs. I mean, it's going to be held off until Saturday against the Rockets. But as we mentioned, Chet off the injury report. That's very fun. So maybe we'll get into that too. That should do it for us for now. Bill's going to be back at it tomorrow with one Brad Botkin. They will be live on YouTube at 12 Eastern. Be sure to check them out at Beyond the Arc CBS on YouTube. But for now, for our NBA Insider Bill Writer, I'm John Gonzalez. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.